Thank you, everybody, for joining our webinar today, focused on how industrial AI is reshaping the plant floor and factory operations. My name is Peter Brand from Oden Technologies, co-founder. I'll be your host today. Oden and Verdantix got together for this webinar, and actually it's the first in a three-part series because the industrial landscape is evolving so fast with AI. And there's so much to learn every day, both in terms of the technology side as well as the manufacturing side, the applications and trends and best practices. I know in my own life, I feel like I fall behind every week from the latest and greatest way to leverage AI. And in the industrial side, I think everybody's seen that there's been a huge data and AI boom over the last 3 or 4 years. The boardroom budgets, digital teams all being recentered around data and AI. I know whole organizations are being restructured with digital centers of excellence, AI teams, a new sort of combination between engineering, traditional IT, AI, and ops. And Verdantix's research, one stat that jumped out to me was that over 70% of manufacturers in their survey are either implementing or actively evaluating generative AI solutions, even just beyond more basic ML. So there's so many applications, so many use cases. Now we're entering a phase where the dust is finally settling. We're separating the noise from the signal on true value of these projects. Many are fizzling out or outright failing. Some are creating dramatic ROI and change. One clear trend that's already standing out: manufacturers are still manufacturers, and most value is where the product is actually being made on the front line. And there's a corresponding rapid shift to systems of record, your traditional historians, MES, SCADA, advanced analytics systems, to systems of action, recommendations straight to the frontline workforce who can turn those recommendations into value and change. So today, Verdantix and Oden will discuss the latest research from hundreds of manufacturing leaders and the technological advancements that ultimately dictate value. So hopefully we're helping rewrite the roadmap to truly winning with AI on the front line. We encourage everybody to submit questions as we go along. Again, this is part 1 of 3. This is going to be more of an overview of the technology and the applications for frontline AI. Later on in subsequent webinars, we're going to do deeper dives into prerequisites for AI and full agentic automation. The next one being 11 a.m. Eastern on January 22nd. Without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce today's speakers. First, we have my co-founder and the CEO of Oden Technologies, Willem Sundblad. Willem is a frequent thinker and speaker on AI and manufacturing, with a focus particularly on sort of the AI and people convergence. Oden, for our part, provides real-time AI-driven intelligence for manufacturing production. And Jatinder Devgun, Senior Analyst at Verdantix. Jatinder conducts primary research across industrial AI, advanced analytics, industrial data ops, and he shares a tremendous amount of insight and knowledge on LinkedIn, where we suggest you give him a follow. Verdantix is one of the top analysts in the industrial AI space and publishes the renowned Green Quadrants. So without further ado, Jatinder, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. If we can just jump to the next slide, please. Perfect. So just a little bit of background on Verdantix before we get started into some of our research. So we're an independent research and advisory firm. We provide a lot of insights and advice on digital strategy, helping firms to kind of streamline decision-making, de-risk investment choices, and kind of helping them with their digital strategy. Next slide, please. And in terms of our kind of client base, we have a global client base of executives, investors, tech providers, and service firms. We cover a range of technologies and sectors, and we have 30 plus different domains So that covers kind of ESG, risk, supply chain, and then more specifically for today's research, industrial transformation and AI. And as kind of Peter introduced, I'm a senior analyst in our industrial transformation team. So in terms of our research, we focus on asset management, operational risk management, connected worker solutions, industrial data management, and AI, and then operational excellence services. We've got 10 years of research. We've produced over kind of 200 market reports, conducted over 2,000 buyer interviews, and then also 200 plus vendor assessments. And of course, our kind of key output is our green quadrant, as you see below. So next slide, I think, Peter, back over to you just to share the agenda.
Yeah, and as we alluded to, I mean, Jatinder's going to help us go through a lot of the trends in the market right now that's derived from research amongst thousands of manufacturing leaders at hundreds of companies on what they're thinking about regarding AI, how they're procuring it, what's blocking it, what's successful, and then we'll turn it over to Willem, who's going to talk about how that's actually being used on the plant floor, what to do on the data readiness side in order to get the right AI tools stood up. We're going to go through tangible case studies. Willem's going to provide a real demo from some of those tools, and then we'll discuss kind of the roadmap to get started. We'll field questions along the way. Please submit them. We may stop for questions. We'll definitely stop for a couple of polls with the audience here. Otherwise, we'll tackle all those questions at the end.
Perfect. Just get the next slide, please. Sorry. Perfect. Thank you. So just in terms of kind of some of the wider market trends that we see, so, aging infrastructure, expansions to renewables, capacity limitations, climate volatility, compliance and regulatory scrutiny, geopolitical and energy market volatility, and then, of course, the long-standing push to kind of reduce costs. But in terms of operational challenges, and we will touch on this a little bit more in depth, but workforce demographics are changing. We've got skill gaps, experience gaps, high churn. Budgets are also always a challenge, and then, of course, process complexity and siloed data. And then in terms of investment opportunities, there's a lot of technology vendors out there, so navigating that landscape can be quite difficult. So if we go to the next slide, please, Peter. Brilliant. So in terms of digital transformation, what we do every year at Verdantix is we have a global corporate survey. So this year we surveyed 333 executives and professionals across industrial sectors. And we asked them about their operational excellence budgets, priorities, and tech preferences. And what we see is there's quite a long way to go in terms of digital transformation. 70+% of organization are either currently ongoing or they're starting their digital transformation journey. I think digital transformation as well, just in general, can be quite a wide term. It can be technology focused, helping with building a strong data foundation, but also it could be that change management and that training side, onboarding people. So it's also the people side, people, process, technology. And in terms of like the selective activities on the right-hand side here that you see, we can see that there's still a small reliance on pen and paper and spreadsheets. So what we're signaling is that there's quite an opportunity still for automation. In terms of the key areas that we looked at improving safety and productivity of frontline workers and field service technicians, manufacturing process design and optimization, and then production yield optimization and management. And at the end of the day, these have an impact on productivity, efficiency, and output. Next slide, please, Peter. I believe we have a first poll.
Yeah, I'm going to activate a poll for everyone to make this interactive. Everybody should see the prompt in front of them now. So first question is, how do you feel about the potential of AI tools on your factory floor? This is a single choice. We have, kind of from one side of the spectrum to the other. How do you, unfamiliar? I don't know what AI would look like on the factory floor. Not our focus. don't see AI tools solving important problems right now. Not ready, see the potential, but need to address foundational infrastructure first. Concerned, risks, security concerns, any other miscellaneous things blocking projects. And then AI tools are live. You're seeing active use and or all the way to ROI on the factory floor. And so we'll give everybody a minute here to submit their feedback.
While we wait for that, Jatinder, I thought it was interesting on the previous slide that you had 10% of your respondents said that they were 100% digitally transformed already. I'd like to find out what 100% completeness looks like.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because you could almost think about digital transformation as like a continuously ongoing process. So I agree. It's an interesting statement for people to make in terms of 100% digitally transformed, and that could go down to them talking about a very specific area of their plant as well, or their operation that they may be talking about in their kind of response.
Maybe they've really done the foundational layer in terms of both data capture and SOPs, etc.
Yeah.
But Peter, feel free to close the poll.
Yeah, I will end it now. And interesting results here. I mean, just kind of off the bat, let me share these with everybody. We've got kind of two sides of the spectrum here. Jatinder, like your research, there is a kind of a smaller growing percentage here, 23%, where people are using AI tools. It's either usage or ROI generating. Don't know if it's 100% complete. I would doubt that, but good active progress there. But then you have the other side of the spectrum where just over half the respondents not ready, seeing the potential, but need to address foundational infrastructure. What's interesting to me is that it's those two take up most of the respondents. There are a few people who are unfamiliar or don't really see AI tools having an application right now. There were a couple in those buckets, but it seems like overall it's more like either you see the potential and you're just getting ready to take the right approach, or you're already underway. So that's very interesting. Jatinder, I'll hand it back to you.
In terms of kind of the factors that are driving digital transformation, similarly, as part of that survey, we asked kind of how significant are the following factors. And again, probably not too surprising, but cost reduction and efficiency is top. But also we see the enablers, the accessibility and increasing maturity of AI technologies. And wearables for frontline workers, IoT, data acquisition for data acquisition and processing. That they're becoming enablers, which are starting to become drivers in that digital transformation approach. Another one, we've touched on this already, but lack of availability of workers. There's high churn, less people filling jobs. It's difficult to transfer knowledge. There can be challenges with upskilling. And then, I mean, how do you capture knowledge of an operator or of an operation from a long-standing worker? Well, really, it's through doing it through digital technology. We also see a lot of kind of pressure from the C-suite to adopt digital technology. So there's a lot of potential out there, and I think the value is being understood more and more now. If we go to the next slide, we could talk a little bit about some of the anticipation that we see for AI technologies.
Can I ask a quick question before we do that? And sorry if I'm putting you on the spot because you might not have this data at your fingertips, but the lack of availability of skilled workers due to aging and retiring workforce. Do you know if there was like a geographical difference in that one? Because it's certainly a massive problem and discussion point in the US. I don't hear about it as much in Europe, and I don't know if it's like if you go to Asia, you don't have that problem, or if everyone's dealing with it across the globe.
Yeah, in terms of that data, I think we see exactly what you say within the US for sure. I think we do see it in Europe a little bit more as well. And then in terms of Asia, don't have too much information on terms of demographics. What we are doing at the moment is also doing some work on a kind of market size and forecast for the industrial AI sector. So we'll be providing some research on that, and we will be looking into kind of gathering some demographic information there to kind of help overlay how we see the market sizes changing and how that will impact the size of the market. So hopefully it'll be part of some of the upcoming research that we've got planned for January.
Yeah, cool.
In terms of those AI technologies, so we asked the respondents about how they see different technologies affecting or transforming their operations over the next 2 years. So predictive analytics came out top with predicting asset failures. Copilots also scored quite strongly. So conversational insights into assets, turning the data streams into actual actionable insights. AI agents as well, which I know we'll be talking about as part of some of the other webinars that we've got coming up. But shifting organizations to that kind of more of a proactive organization, being able to kind of monitor equipment for anomalies, generate work orders, generate alerts, check inventory, schedule work. And then we also see autonomous robots for kind of process execution and being able to adapt to real-time events and help with kind of inspections as well.
I think maybe just to pause on this slide for a second, because I think this actually shows a pretty good view of like the umbrella term of AI. Because since 2022, people often think of AI as just large language models and ChatGPT, but really AI is an umbrella term that includes classic machine learning, like in predictive analytics, deep learning for image classification and computer vision, as well as large language models and copilots, or agents that are using large language models within the agents as well. So I think especially in terms of manufacturing AI adoption, it usually is an umbrella of multiple different models that are actually driving the results.
So we've got a second poll here to drive a little bit more discussion. Everybody should see that up on their screens. So now we're talking about what are your biggest challenges with implementing industrial AI or agents, and again, industrial AI being kind of that umbrella term that Willem just mentioned. So select all that apply here. So IT resources, lack of tech resources to run these kinds of projects, data quality and reliability. Maybe you don't fully trust your data infrastructure or the reporting that you already have. Legacy systems, architecture not modern or flexible enough to get the right data or tools. General organizational readiness, maybe management systems, your standard operating procedures aren't sort of AI friendly, or maybe there needs to be more improvement there before you're implementing AI. And then frontline workforce, to Willem's point before, change management, ability to adopt new technology, perhaps a challenge for the frontline workers. So we'll give this a minute here, but initial feedback looks like it's just kind of across the board, all relevant. And yeah, Willem and Jatinder, to your point about the frontline workforce before, it's interesting because it's sort of I've always sort of seen it as a dual-edged sword where if you have high turnover, if you have the brain drain that's happening, especially in North America, that's part of like a generational shift. It could make it much more difficult than it already is to change what an operator or frontline worker is looking at, their standards, their adoption of new tools. It can also present even a higher opportunity as well, where you have maybe a newer workforce that's more used to those kinds of tools already elsewhere or in their personal life, or where your manufacturers are just forced to introduce a new level of automation and know-how sharing between workers in order to close that gap. So it's an interesting problem because I think to me there's as much of a cost as there is an opportunity, but if you have to approach it in the right way, you can take advantage of it.
Yeah. And just on that, I think definitely as part of some of the kind of buyer interviews I've done, there has been talk of that, younger people coming in, they're actually a lot more willing to kind of adopt these technologies. They've got a kind of higher, I guess, technical literacy in that, or digital literacy, if that makes sense as well, and willingness to use those technologies.
Yeah, yeah. So I just shared the results with everybody here, and all seem like they're relevant challenges with industrial AI. The two leaders here are more on the organizational side rather than the systems or the data side. So number one being organizational readiness, number two being IT resources. And then behind that is more of like legacy systems, data quality, reliability. And then and last is actually frontline workforce. So maybe the audience viewing some of the turnover of frontline workforce and those challenges as either maybe being not as much of a challenge or as more of an opportunity to introduce these tools, like you were saying, Jatinder. But especially on the organizational side for readiness and IT, certainly something maybe we can speak to as we continue going here is, what are some of the more sort of change management related standards that manufacturers have introduced to address, the people side of the people plus tech or people plus AI equation, knowing that, both are equally important. Jatinder, Willem, any other thoughts here? Yeah.
Yeah, I find it interesting because like with data quality and legacy systems, they can absolutely be, clear barriers, but there's also clear barriers there where there's a solution to it where you can, upgrade or add middleware to connect systems or add sensors, or, there's a capital project that can be executed on to solve those problems. Organizational readiness is not, a capital project to change. That's more of a will and culture, which is, good news, bad news. Because it's good news, well, that doesn't cost money to fix. Bad news is, well, it might be harder to fix if it's actually ingrained in the culture that you don't want to improve.
Yeah, great point. All right.
I think those answers, I think, quite resonate with that. Sorry, if you could go to the next slide. I think those answers from that poll quite resonate with some of the barriers for implementation. So in terms of kind of impacting the success of industrial AI analytics projects, number one in our survey was poor data quality. So siloed data from OT systems is a challenge, and I think the old adage, garbage in equals garbage out. So without complete and accurate data, investments could struggle to deliver, I guess, the desired value or maybe the expected value. It creates data usability challenges down the line. And then also, I think we could look at using AI to maybe to drive data quality initiatives. So kind of fixing those data pipelines between assets and analytics. And I think also with that poor data quality, it also, we look at the bottom one there in terms of the lack of trust in the insights generated. It does also kind of play a factor in that. Another aspect or an area that we had quite a strong answer on was around a lack of in-house knowledge for implementing and sustaining AI analytic projects. I think we talked a little bit there, again, some of those kind of organizational readiness, change management aspects. So wider AI upskilling challenges. I know kind of implementation partners can help with that, and obviously strong change management and effective training too, and trying to help change that culture. I think that's also where C-suite and kind of executive sponsorship can really help. And then in terms of ROI, it's a comment we get quite a lot in our interviews as well, that it's hard to measure because, I mean, AI systems are interconnected. I guess it could be hard to attribute value directly to those technologies. There's also kind of a lot of cost avoidance too. So ensuring you kind of have the correct KPIs and measures in place can help with that. But yeah, if we kind of look at the amount of firms that are already kind of implementing AI, Gen AI, we already kind of see factors like LLMs with reasoning capabilities, and now APIs enabling a lot of integration of agents into enterprise systems, helping to drive kind of Gen AI implementation or willingness to implement or exploring implementing Gen AI. So in terms of kind of automation, helping to reduce manually repetitive tasks such as data entry, also kind of helps make sense of a lot of that unstructured data. So handwritten logs, PDFs, pre-text descriptions can help identify those kind of recurring failure patterns or root causes. I remember talking to one buyer or user of technology, and they mentioned that Gen AI had reduced RCA data gathering from 6 weeks to 6 hours for them. So it was like a significant impact straight away. And that was, and I know I can already see some questions talking a little bit around this, but that kind of pilot led to, I think, 14 other use cases being defined for other kind of Gen AI use cases, which really helps kind of prove that value. And also in terms of quality control and safety, continuous monitoring, catching anomalies and failures earlier than human checks. And I mean, overall, 74% of firms have or are implementing Gen AI. So I think the value is quite clear, and firms are acting, but maybe there needs to be a bit more kind of focus now in terms of what those use cases are. And I think if we go to the next slide, we could talk a little bit around budgets. So we're seeing that there is a continued increase in budgets. Over 70% are increasing their budgets, but there's also, interestingly, a quarter of firms that are not increasing their budgets. And the majority of people are really increasing their budgets by only 1 to 9% growth. So I think we're starting to see a bit more of a measured approach to AI projects. I think getting ROI and value from investments is a bit more of is becoming more of a focus now. I think we can think of AI as not an experimental hype, or it's not a top of the hype curve anymore. We're moving towards that kind of operationalization of AI. I think firms are really identifying clear business cases with measurable outcomes. And just on those use cases, we asked our respondents to rank the top 3 high-value use cases for AI for their firm. And the first one, the most important, was automated prioritization of operational issues to improve the effectiveness of plant managers and supervisors. Secondly, was the ability to predict asset failures and avoid unplanned downtime, which is, of course, costly. And thirdly, more accurate maintenance task completion through real-time adaptable work instructions. So I think the opportunity is there, but it's how do you kind of capitalize on that opportunity? So I'll pass it over to Willem, and he'll discuss a little bit more on how you can kind of drive action with process AI.
Yeah, thank you, Jatinder. I think we talked a little bit about root cause analysis, and also the automated prioritization of operational issues. There are 2 very simple use cases, but they actually drive a lot of value. A quote that I've heard that I really like is that the value of a company is the sum of all the problems that you solve. And so if you can just speed up problem solving, that means you can solve more problems, your continuous improvement cycle moves faster, and you increase the value of your company. So that really resonates with me. Let's talk a little bit about driving action, because moving from systems of records to systems of action means that we need to really focus on how do we drive that action. And we like to think of it as value is not created until people are doing different actions than what they were doing before, and especially it starts on the front line. when the operators are driving different actions than what they were doing before, and they're doing that, shift in, shift out, day in, day out, that's when you're really getting compounded value from it. We've touched a lot on the labor challenges already, so I won't belabor the point, but it is kind of jarring when you go visit facilities and you see, 70 to 100% year-over-year turnover, no one in the night shift that's been there for more than 7 months, because it is really difficult. It is difficult for everyone. It is difficult to start in a role like that when there aren't that many peers around you that you can learn from who have that domain knowledge. It is difficult from a management perspective. It takes up a lot of resources, and especially if you get these new hires in and they don't stay for the long haul either. So, well, we really like to think of it as how can we get the new operators to perform like experienced operators, much, much faster? Can you get them there in 2 to 3 weeks instead of 1 to 2 years? And can you move the needle for the experienced operators also? And even though we focus a lot on how we can help operators drive better actions, really it's about getting the flywheel, or kind of what we call the operations heartbeat, which is the collaboration between operators, engineers, and supervisors. Because really, engineers' roles should be to, of course, solve problems, but also to set the standard work that should be executed on. And then the operators should execute on the standard work, and the supervisors should support the operators in executing on the standard work, or help them with exceptions, understand who's struggling with what and who's going to help them do that so that they can have a better day on the floor. This collaboration is really what drives, a better day in the life for the operator and better performance from the operators. We like to think of kind of industrial AI as being 3 different steps. And the first step that an industrial AI system needs to do in order to help the operator is to understand the question of what is actually happening on the line. And this is where, some of the readiness challenges might come in, because the time series data alone doesn't generally tell you what is happening on the line. You need to enrich that time series data in order to get a better understanding of what is happening on the line. But this is really the first step, because if you don't know what's happening on the line, you can't go further. Because the next step is, when you know what is happening on the line, the next step is, what should be done about it? What should I do about it? Or what should be done about it by other teams or other systems? And then step 3 is drive that action also. Can you close the time for that action to happen so that you can move on faster? But if we start with the first one there, on how do you know what is happening on the line? And the first part of it is that kind of data foundation, where you need the streaming time series data. You also need it to be, contextualized, so you understand what product is on the line, what line is it, what material is being used. And one of the things that we focus a lot on is something we call data labeling, where we can make that time series data much more useful, and especially without operator input. Because as soon as you have operator input, obviously sometimes it's required, or operator kind of refinement of the labels, but you introduce a non-value added task for the operator. And every operator will do it slightly differently, which means that the data can't be trusted. So I'll give you one very simple example here, where it's an automatic label of a changeover. The kind of purple line there is the manually entered changeover start time and end time. And the yellowy orangey one is the one automatically assigned by our system based on the metric behavior. And you can see another label there that's from the ramp up. And so labels can be added to the time series data based on rules, rules of, multivariate rules of what's happening with the time series data. It can also be done with supervised machine learning models or anomaly detection. And so here's an example where we're actually detecting anomalies with the abnormal factors and labeling them on a recurring basis moving forward. One thing that we're also doing is a combination of either looking at it as a matrix profile, or it's a fancy name, but it's called dynamic time warping. Really what this does is it looks at the kind of period in time of the process variables as a matrix. And then it searches for other times in history when you have kind of the same mathematical distance between one matrix to another, which means that the metric profiles look the same. This is a really good tool, because if you found one area in the time series data that is of interest that could or may not be recurring, you can select that, and the algorithm searches for all the other times that it's happened. You can label it historically, and then build a model that can classify it moving forward in real time. So with those different tools, you can have time series data that is much more useful. You can label really granular events without operator input, and you can start to actually understand what is happening on the line right now. And when you know what is happening on the line, that's when you move on to, well, what should be done about it? In some cases, it might again be simple rules to follow, with SOPs and one-point lessons. Like we have an example where we're classifying anomalies in the quality of the product. The action that should be taken there is that they should, follow a particular procedure to do more diagnostic testing, potentially adjust tooling or other things inside of the machine. For some things, it might be more complex. The process might be quite complex. There might be trade-offs that the operator needs to make between different process adjustment that they can make. In those cases, we model the process so that we can give the operator real-time dynamic recommendations. And this is what we call process AI. This is what we'll show a little bit in the demo here. These types of actions that we're presenting to the operators are great when it isn't as simple as just follow the SOP, because it might be that there are 4 different levers that they could pull on. If in the case of a paper industry, you could pull on refining energy, you could pull on chemical additives, you can pull on machine speed, and which one to follow is dependent on a lot of the other variables in the process and the stage of the process. And so those types of really difficult operator decisions are what is often called more of an art than a science, and usually lives more with the experienced operators. So if you can model the behavior of the experienced operators and present that to the newer operators, you can get them to perform like seasoned veterans much, much faster. And the last thing is really integrating it into other systems too. Because one of the things that we've learned is that, not all of the actions that drive value is done directly by the operator. Sometimes it's a collaboration with other teams. So let's say that you are detecting an equipment anomaly. You can show that to the operator so that the operator is aware of it, and maybe that adjusts the recommendation that they're going to see. But a really valuable thing is send it directly to the CMMS system to create a work order so that someone from maintenance can come there and help. And we really believe that that kind of labeled data foundation in real time and connecting it to the other systems is what can get, a truly intelligent operation off the ground. So this is an example of what process AI can look like for a more complex process, where the operator needs to take into account many different variables, different stages of the process, and understanding both real-time quality, whether it's inline or predicted, as well as some of those process trade-offs. And when we think about kind of that operations heartbeat again, the operator trusting the recommendations and executing on the recommendations is critical. But making sure that the supervisors, shift supervisors, value stream managers actually have visibility into, how are they doing? Is the adherence to the recommendation, good? And are the results coming in is critical. So we always try to, package the kind of complete solution for all different personas so that their collaboration is easier. So we look at something called adherence score, where if adherence score is high, it means that the operators are following very closely to the recommended standard work. If the adherence score is high and the results are there, everything is working well. If the adherence score is high, but the results aren't coming, then there's something wrong with the recommendation model, and it needs to be tuned and tweaked because it's not producing the results. If adherence score isn't high, then there's either reasons that need to be learned from the operators of why weren't you able to use the recommendation. Maybe it is an equipment issue or something that is preventing them from actually getting to those results, or it's a training opportunity where they didn't know that they should follow it. But this type of transparency, visualization, and kind of change management is critical to really get it to work. And when it does, the results are really staggering. So this is one of our customers where they actually saw a 40% improvement in rates. And it's interesting because in some of these cases, the actual results are pretty close to targets, but they just weren't able to consistently meet targets before. And in some cases, they've been able to go way beyond targets while maintaining quality and utilization. And I think this is an organization that has done really incredible work because, they got the results that everyone dreams of in terms of OEE up over 20%, more high quality product out the door. And especially, I think the thing that to be really proud of is that their 6-month new hire retention has gone from 20% to 91%, which is, a massive, massive difference. And a lot of that comes down to, now everyone knows what is expected of them, and they know if they're winning or losing on a day-to-day basis. And if they're losing, they get help really quickly, because what everyone wants is to come in, be on a team that's winning, win more days than you're losing, win ideally every day, but at least more days than you're losing, and know that you're getting the support from your systems and your team members. I'll show a little bit about what this can look like in real time. And like I mentioned before, we like to think of it as, the umbrella term of AI. So I'll show you a little bit of both kind of the machine learning applications of how we drive recommendations, as well as the large language models, how we can understand what is happening, and some of the data labeling. So right now we're seeing a typical process AI recommendation, where in this case, they will want to decrease line speed because there is a problem with a zone temperature that's drifting. So it's an equipment related issue. And, this is a pretty easy recommendation to follow, honestly. But if they are needing some extra help, they can always use this our Forge tool to ask questions about the recommendation, and it'll actually explain it for the operator. So it goes in and understands the logic, and they can ask questions. Maybe I need to refresh because I've been having this in the background for a long time. We'll give it a minute. No, it's good. All right, so this gives you, the reasoning, the technical explanation, and the impact. And if you're an engineer in charge of actually owning this recommendations, you can, go in and update as well. But if we go then to kind of that supervisor view of understanding how am I actually going to drive action and performance. So what we're looking at here is a typical kind of scorecard from operations. So you have, how you're doing against your goals, run log. This run log here goes for the last 5 or 6 months. I want to these two things as an example. So ramp ups and take ups. and real changes. Are events that are labeled based on with that kind of data enrichment in the streaming data. Those are events that are not labeled by operators. It doesn't come automatically from a run bit. It is done in the system. And all of those different kind of operator actions, if you can label those, it makes it very easy to drive better performance. But let's just look at this run log as an example. I'm just going to say across all runs, which operators have the highest improvement opportunity. Let's see, because I can imagine this is, something that a supervisor wants to understand. And this looks at, like I mentioned, the last 5 months. And what we're seeing here is that the operator Henry has the largest amount of problems. So let's focus a little bit on Henry. So which products are Henry struggling with? We can find out. All right, so CU50 is the biggest challenge for Henry. And we can say, all right, so for CU50, which operators, or should I say, yeah, which operators, or say, who can train on CU500, or who would be best to train on CU500? All right, so now we know that Henry is the one that struggles the most. He struggles with the CU500 product, and James seems to be the one that's the best one at running it. So if I'm a supervisor, I've been able to diagnose, which operator needs the most amount of training, what do they need training with, and who's going to train them, all in just a few seconds. I'll go back and I'll tease, the next couple of webinars will go more into the data labeling aspect, and we'll go more into agents, because what you saw there is a combination of kind of 2 agents. One as like an insights agent that can analyze that data and produce results. There's another agent that does the actual code generation to get the data from natural language into deterministic queries from the backend. What we'll be talking about more is both agents for root cause analysis and agents for kind of line setup configuration and data management as well. But really what we're driving in that kind of operations heartbeat is, the kind of flywheel of using data to drive value, which ultimately will discover new bottlenecks, new use cases, greater understanding and engagement by your team members, which generally leads to an expansion of that data set. That's why I was asking a little bit about the people who are 100% transformed already, because typically what happens is that you start with one use case, and you start solving that use case, and that use case is no longer the bottleneck. There's a new bottleneck right now, which demands maybe a different data set, maybe different team members to actually start working on it. And it really is just the classic continuous improvement cycle that manufacturers has always done, but just moving faster because you can automate more and more of it. And we've also seen that manufacturers tend to be more ready than they think they are, at least as a starting point. Because the 2 things that people care about first and foremost is, am I achieving process stability? And when I'm stable, can I run it as efficiently as I can? And the things that you need to be able to assess those things tend to be visible to the operators as they're actually running it. So that most of the key variables are captured. You want to know what product is on the line. You want to know what your rate is on the line. Inline quality is obviously best, but in a lot of cases, you can't actually measure fully quality in line. So the question is, can you build proxy metrics? Are there things like a standard deviation of another metric that can serve as a proxy for process stability that at least lets you know that the process is stable and it can give confidence to the operators? And then, of course, any key controllable or observable variables that is currently seen by operators and the senior operators who know what to look for. Because that's really what it comes down to. How can we learn what the good operators and the seasoned veterans are doing, translate that into a system that everyone can follow, so you're kind of raising up the new ones to be as performant as the seasoned veterans. But yeah, to kind of summarize this part of the section, the operator is the ultimate customer, and the operator is where the action needs to be driven in order for value to be captured. And a lot of the surrounding, tools and personas should really focus on making sure that the operator can execute as best as possible, whether that's supervisors, plant managers, engineers, making sure that the operators are executing day in and day out. And if we can simplify the action, narrow the focus, one of the things that we see the best of the best do is really drive, single focus on a day-to-day basis, so that the operators know when they're leaving that shift whether they are winning or losing. I'll talk for a second just about a couple of capabilities that we'll share more in the next couple of webinars. So including more work instructions into those recommendations. These are products that customers are using today, and they're starting to become more GA available to everyone. As well as we'll talk a lot more about agents and building specific agents for specific workflows to automate and simplify more tasks for the team members who are on the factory floor, especially around supervisors and engineers, so that they get more time back, because the can speed up the problem solving for them. They can solve more problems, and they are currently in short supply in the manufacturing industry. With that, Peter, I think we'll hand over to Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Willem and Jatinder. Awesome part one of the series, where I think we're covering all the elements on a high level. Looking forward to deeper dive on the agentic automation, on that experience, as well as data admin and management. So we'll make sure to get that info to everybody. Please submit questions if you haven't already. Someone asked, can the slides be shared? We absolutely will. We'll make it available over the next day or two. So look out for a reach out from Oden. Again, part two of the webinar is on January 22nd. You can actually register for that webinar at oden.io/webinar, but we'll send that link along with the deck and the presentation recording. One question that did come in, and I'm happy to sort of start this off and field this as we get more. But I think this was more to some of those last slides, Willem, that you had. Someone asked here, what can we do to make sure that frontline workers are adopting the AI technology? I think this kind of speaks to some of those like workforce concerns, those operational readiness concerns that came in the chat before. I know from what I've seen with some of our customers that first of all, like on the data side, it does start with modeling and reflecting that manufacturing process correctly in the data that's going into your AI and analytics tools. That's something that our services or our solutions team does closely with the subject matter experts at our customers. So underlines the importance of involving operators, but as well as process engineers, supervisors, that sort of the operational backbone of the plant. But to me, also, what always kind of like makes me laugh, because it's easy to overlook, is just sort of the day-to-day operational norms that people often overlook. Like one example is our team, when we're getting the process AI tool up and running with operators, our client service team attends daily stand-ups with the plant team. And some plant teams don't even do daily stand-ups, but we kind of recommend that they do. And what we do is we review recommendation by recommendation, which ones were taken, which ones weren't, what bottlenecks did what like caused any sort of blockage in taking that action. Was it there on the floor, the operator just didn't have an opportunity to do it? Was it something within the data? Did the operator maybe feel apprehensive that they weren't going to be supported in following through with that recommendation because maybe it went up against some training that they've received prior? But we always see sort of that like combination of the supervisor, the operator, the process engineer, the software supplier as all being on the same page as to what behavior or action is expected and what's blocking that, and improving that cycle of iteration and continuous improvement right off the bat. But those customers who do end up getting more value from the solution are the ones who sort of maintain that feedback loop and that communication, now that they have sort of that central source of truth that everybody can queue off of, where everyone isn't actually looking at different things all day. Willem, Jatinder, anything else that you guys see on that front?
Yeah, I mean, if the operators aren't using the tool, I would listen to them because there's probably a reason why they aren't doing it. We've seen that where, we thought we had the recommendation right, but we were actually missing a key element, which was the material being used, because depending on the material, they needed to do things slightly differently. And given that that hadn't been factored in, they were nervous about it. So we were able to factor that in, and all of a sudden that concern was gone, and I started using it. And so there is, I would just listen. There's usually a very tangible problem that can be solved, and then fix it for them. Because ultimately, we're doing this for the operators. So if you're not listening to them and fixing the problem for them, then what are you here for?
Maybe last question here. What examples can you share of leveraging AI in the health and safety space? And I think what I've realized over time is that health and safety, quality, efficiency, productivity, they're all the same, different sides of the same coin. And every implementation I think that we've gone through with process AI does have a health and safety component, in that an operator or a supervisor 99 times out of 100 already has too many things to do, right? Like if you're asking too many things of them, that's inherent risk and safety risk. If they're doing extra movement, if they're doing extra tasks, if they are confused or mixed up about what they should be doing when, bad things happen. So sorting out and making more straightforward what they can do to ensure quality, to ensure efficiency on the line, always has a positive, safety effect, because what they are being asked to do becomes more straightforward. So that's kind of, I think, what we've seen in pretty much every case. Willem, I don't know if you have anything to add there too.
I want to pass it to Jatinder.
Yes, I think from our side, we've obviously done a fair bit of research. I think it's a bit more of one of our other research practices focus. But I know, for example, there's a lot of things around, increasing actually in health and safety compliance, in terms of being able to quickly identify compliance requirements, helping summarize. And actually, we saw, I've recently did a project with a firm that were providing a solution, and auto summaries and prompting, when you're kind of doing those disclosures, prompting users to add in more information. So actually the data quality goes up quite a bit. And I guess also looking back at historical data logs, near incident misses, things like that, you can start looking at that kind of more predicting those potential high risk issues. or locations within the planet, or specific tasks that may have had issues related to them. So it could help flag those as well.
Thank you,
The one
Jatinder.
thing,
And
the one
go
thing
ahead,
I'll
Will.
add is just the health and safety issues are quite often correlated with experience or low experience and stress. And so if you can make the operators more comfortable, with both the experience and the stress of knowing what's expected of them, at least you're reducing the likelihood of health and safety issues just by helping them on kind of the stress and experience piece.
Thanks, guys. Well, I know we're over time now. Thank you to all for attending and the thoughtful and engaging questions. Again, you'll receive an email in the next day or two here with a recording and a copy of the slides and the poll questions. And be sure to sign up for the next webinar in January. We appreciate you joining us. Have a great rest of your day and a wonderful holiday season. Thank you.